W or a Z or a photon. Turns out, after a lot of theoretical work, that this is believed to be the dominant contribution in the decaying amplitude, whereas these box diagrams are the dominant things from the mixing. And I wanted to draw the diagram because you may, if you're associated with particle physics at all, you will hear the term penguin diagram. And that's because this diagram, if you use your imagination, looks a little bit like a penguin. There's a number of people in physics who like to make sort of jokes, and one of those people was sort of, somebody bet him that he couldn't figure out a way to use the word penguin in a published paper, so he did. Okay, that's all I really want to do on this. In the Kaon system, there's relatively limited information that one has. Basically, it's only the rates for these two processes. There's a couple other things that are not experimentally independent, but not theoretically. And the mixing actually gives in that picture on top. That actually gets a relatively weak constraint. This is the CT violation in the Kaon system. It was enough to eliminate the solution. However, in the last 15 years or 20 years, there have been intense studies of the neutral B system and other aspects of the B at dedicated E plus E minus colliders at Stanford, part of the SLAC complex, and at Bell, at the KEK lab in Japan. And also at hadron colliders like the Tevatron, in which one produces, in hadron colliders you produce a lot more B mesons, but the environment does not explain. And the mixing and decay in these sectors have been studied in great detail, and there's lots of CT violations observed. Some of there was CT violation again in both the mixing, from Oxford diagrams, they took the same diagrams, just putting a bottom instead of a string in the diagram. And also in the decaying amplitude. And these penguin diagrams, replacing ES by V, are one of the contributions. There are other contributions. That's not the only thing that can lead to CT violation in the decays, but it's important. At any rate, the bottom line is that now there are good measurements, like, for example, there was a very nice measurement that basically determined the angle to be like this, and then when it's measuring a sine of an angle, there were other solutions that are off in the middle of nowhere, but basically everything converges on one point. So, to an excellent precision, the unitarity is respected. The bottom line from this is that in this sector of the standard model, and also in the weak neutral current sector, and the Z boson and its decays, and I didn't have time in this course to talk about that, mainly because that's sort of older. Most of that work was done 20 years ago, whereas a lot of this is quite recent. The standard SU2.1 model was tested at least in the interaction of gauge bosons with fermions basically at a 1 part in 1,000 level, and it works. And again, one really needs all the higher order corrections that are only sensible in a standard model for that. Okay, that concludes what I wanted to say about the CKM matrix and unitarity and so forth. What I want to now turn to is almost the last sector. Well, there were two other sectors to discuss. One I don't want to say much about is the triple gauge boson sector. There are predictions, of course, about there are predictions this is W plus, W minus, this can be either Z or gamma, and there are predictions for various 4-point interactions. I won't write them all out, and these are not as well tested. Typically, they're tested at the several percent level. This one is the strongest prediction, and this one is, I alluded to this last week. If you just do E minus E plus goes to W minus W plus, then you have several diagrams. You have the E minus mu E, E plus, W minus W plus, and then if you just sort of naively say, well, this is electrically charged, and there's some prescription for the photon has to couple to an electrically charged particle by some minimal substitution. I didn't talk about that. Then you have two diagrams, and you calculate from these, so this is not the standard model, this would be without the standard model. You would calculate the cross-section as a function of the center of mass energy. You would predict something that increases very, very rapidly. But in the standard model, you also have the Z, which to a considerable extent cancels these others. And so the prediction in the standard model is that it turns over. And this is related to the renormalizability. There's a high degree of cancellations. Yeah.
So if you do have a loss diagram, could we find a group in which you could accommodate those W minus gamma with gamma mass relation that you massive?
No, well, there were other gauge groups, like based on an SO3, that actually did something like that, but the cancellations were because there were additional fermions that came in, and the cancellations occurred in a totally different way. Anyway, so that's the prediction, and of course the data are, I'm just sort of making it up, but I mean at the point the data agrees. So I don't want to dwell on that anymore. But it's reasonably tested. But what I do want to turn to now is the Higgs sector, which was the last big aspect. And the relevant terms involving the Higgs that we've already written these in some form or another is, I think I'm going to, instead of the Lagrangians, I've written these all before. I'm just going to write down the Feynman diagrams. So here's the Higgs, W minus, W plus, and mu, and there's a 2I G mu here, MW squared over mu in the vortex. And mu, as always, is 246 GeV, and the Higgs field in unitary gauge is mu plus H. So mu is the Webb, and H is the physical Higgs. And then there's an analogous diagram for the Z. And this is 2I G mu and Z squared over mu. And there are 3 and 4 point vertices sequencing of diagrams. And this is 2I G mu MW squared over mu squared. And the Z 2I G mu M Z squared over mu squared. And there are couplings to fermions that are diagonal in flavor. They take an up into an up or down into a down. And so this is fermion F. This is minus I times the mass over mu. And there are interactions of the Higgs with itself, 3 and 4 point. And this was this is, one here is minus 3I mH squared over mu, and this one is minus 3I mH squared over mu squared. I didn't write it that way exactly, but the point is that we had this quartic coupling lambda that sits there, which turns out when you work out all the formulae, it's mH squared is 2 lambda mu squared, and you can rewrite this in the end as in various ways, but it becomes mH squared over mu squared. So where did I get the 3? Well, it becomes what? G Fermi mH squared over root 2. It becomes G squared mH squared over 8 and W squared, and which is mH squared over 2 mu squared. Okay, so this is basically lambda is 3 instead of 2 because there's some different combinatorics of how you combine the different H fields with the external lines. But basically, in every one of these couplings are proportional to the mass of the particle over nu, or the mass squared of the particle over nu, or the mass squared of the particle over nu squared. So it couples the mass in some sense. Now, initially, we did not know anything. We did not know what lambda was. So initially, all one could say was that lambda had to be positive, prediction one could make. Now, one could actually do a little better than that. That's sort of the naive bound. There were actually theory bounds that were somewhat better than that, that go under the name of triviality and vacuum stability, which have upper and lower bounds on the Higgs. And I'm going to say just a word about those. And then there were, of course, experimental searches. And in order to search for the Higgs experimentally, you have to produce it and you have to detect it from its decays. And so the first, well, there were very early bounds looking for very light Higgs, but the most significant bounds were at LEP 2. This was the second phase of the E plus E minus collider in Geneva at CERN, and this is the same place where they measured that E plus E minus goes to W plus W minus cross section. And they looked for E plus E minus making a virtual Z, which would decay into a real Z plus a Higgs. So they were using this vertex, the ZZH vertex. And if this is if this is a real on-shell Z and this is massive, then this would have to be off-shell. It's virtual. Or in early stages, they were actually had a real Z looking for a virtual Z, and I think that's only relevant for a very light Z. But at any rate, this would be tagged by, for example, Z goes to D plus V minus, and for example, H goes to dV bar, for example. Assuming that the Higgs is not twice the top quark mass, the dominant decay mode in the fermions is dV bar, because the bottom quark is the heaviest fermion other than the top. So this is the dominant fermion decay mode. But there were other possibilities. They were mainly just tagging on the thing. Well, they didn't observe anything, and so this already set a limit in H bigger than 114.4 GeV. Precision, electroweak. Although I haven't talked about it, I've alluded to the fact that measurements of the properties of the Z